We are live. Of course, at this particular moment, there are leaf blowers outside and a dog barking, but maybe everyone won't be hearing it right now.
Yeah.
So first of all, I can't believe that this worked out, that I am interviewing Paria Hassouri for Transgender Awareness Week. Like, we tried so long to get this interview scheduled, and here we are, and it couldn't be more perfect. I'm here, as I said, with Paria Hassouri, who is a pediatrician.
Pediatrician, yes, Paria.
And the author of Found in Transition, which is her story as the mother of 3 and a transgender rights activist and the mother of a trans daughter.
Correct.
So a mouthful. I'm going to say that I'm working super hard to do all of the right language. And if I err at any point, I want you to correct me, because I feel like the only way we get better at this is by being told that there's a better way to say it. So I apologize
Absolutely.
if there's any times where I misstep, and I hope that you'll just correct that.
Sounds great.
Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for what you're doing and for your bravery and Ava's bravery. And I think you're changing the world, really, by being out there doing this. So I want to start with the question, how did you find out?
So the way we found out is Ava was 13 and a half, and my husband and I were actually on a yoga retreat in Thailand, and it was 5 a.m, Thailand, and we got a call from her school vice principal to let us know that they had called my parents to pick her up from school because she had confided in a teacher that she thought that she's not a boy and that she's a girl, and that she'd also been engaging in some self-harming because she didn't know how to tell us. So we found out through a phone call while we were thousands of miles away from her. And that was a really, really difficult.
Okay.
I would say before that, we had no clue whatsoever, never, ever suspected for even 1 second that she may be trans.
Okay. So in your book, Found in Transition, which, by the way, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I'm so changed from reading it. And I encourage everybody, whether it's something you're dealing with or you know somebody dealing with it, it's just an open your heart book. So you get this phone call, and your reaction is, it's a surprise to know you right now and to hear what your reaction was. So can you share that?
Yeah, well, my reaction when I got the phone call was, there's absolutely no way this is true. So this is some sort of mix up, and I'm going to fly back to LA and I'm going to clear all of this up. And when I got back to Los Angeles, her dad and I sat with her in the family room, and she kind of proceeded to tell us what she'd been feeling over the last year and why she was sure that she was trans. And I said, there's absolutely no way that you are trans. I know you better than you know yourself. You're just confused, or you're trying to get attention, or you're depressed, or something's going on. So I will get you a therapist to help you figure out what's going on. But there's absolutely no way that you're trans, or that we are going to support you to transition before you're an adult.
Were you feeling any reaction from Ava at that moment? Like, were you too much in your own head to see what her reaction was?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell that she immediately shut down, but I was so angry that I couldn't. I mean, my brain, like, there was so much going on in my own brain, and I was so frustrated that I just, I saw her shut down, and I should have been alarmed, but I wasn't.
So we're at the point right now where obviously you have become a big supporter of Ava's,
right?
And so and just a general vocal advocate for the trans community. So a parent comes to you either in your setting as a pediatrician or just in your life and tells you their story. Are you able to shorten the time frame that it took you to kind of go from anger to acceptance by having your story to share with them? And what do you tell them?
Yeah, I think the whole reason to share our story is to shorten this time frame for another parent who's going through it, so that their child, for us, Ava had about 9-month delay in getting the appropriate care while I was going through my denial, anger, grief, process. And so the entire reason to share our story and talk about this is to shorten that duration for the next parent and child duo, because during that 9-month period, while I was coming to terms with it, my daughter was, not only was she deteriorating mentally, but because she was in the peak of puberty, her body was also changing and masculinizing in a direction that was causing more distress, and against what she was comfortable with. And I think that the reason that I had such a hard time and was in so much denial is because I really didn't think that she had any signs of being trans until she came out as a teenager. And the majority of what we see in the media are stories of trans people who have signs, early in childhood. And now we have all these parents faced with teenagers and young adults who are coming out seemingly out of the blue, who, don't know what to do, don't know if it's a phase, don't, believe their child. And so I think hearing stories like mine, and then also what was really instrumental for me was, joining a support group where I heard other parents have my exact same story, is what's going to hopefully help another parent react differently than I did and not have this, delay in seeking care for their child.
Well, so I have a gay kid, and that social movement changed so rapidly that I was keenly aware when my son came out that we were in a glorious time to deal with it. And the trans movement has taken a little longer, but you are pushing that agenda so rapidly by having written the book and going out there and speaking. So hopefully,
I hope so.
You're at the forefront of making that change. So, it's interesting. You say that in your book that coming out during puberty is not so unusual. So we also see the new when they were 3. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is there's more than one story that parents can't necessarily be like, phew, I'm so relieved it never showed up before. It can't be true.
Right. I think that up until the last couple of years, the majority of what people have been exposed to in the media has been, when they're 3, 4, 5 years old, there's signs. So if you made it to teenhood and your child hasn't shown signs of it, then no, your child isn't trans. And that's not the case. At least 50% or more of children start presenting around puberty when their body starts changing, or possibly later.
Now, you jumped on full force when you jumped on, and you were right there to help your daughter get hormone therapy. Mm-hmm. Did you find that there was a lot of pushback from people who felt like it's too young, this is too young to do that, and you should wait until they're, I don't know, pick the magic number?
Yeah, I think I definitely had some family who had concerns about that she was too young to start hormones, and that maybe we should wait and start later. I had a couple of friends who said that. And I think these are really, really difficult decisions for parents to make. And it's really, for me, at a point, I had to surround myself with sort of the right people to help guide me, because it did feel like too big of a decision for me to make. So I had to make sure that, I got her, I was, fortunate enough to be able to get her in with one of the doctors at Children's Hospital who's been doing this for 20 years now. And really had to sort of hand over the reins of decision making, to her doctor and have her therapist help me do that. And I would say to people who are saying that to, other parents and families going through this, when we make these decisions for our children, and what I wanted to convey in the book is we're not, making these decisions lightly. So, people shouldn't really speak about something that they haven't had personal experience with, and that they should support us in the decisions that we are making for our children.
That's the best case scenario. That is beautiful. I mean, so my family just watched Pose, which is about the Black trans community, I think in the 80s.
Yes.
And all these kids have been rejected by their families. And so it's your story is so hopeful compared to what these kids lived through. Like they are literally, they have no family. They have to find new family because they're all alone. And you embraced Ava. Yeah. So did the world also embrace Ava? Was she ever bullied by her friends or in situations at school that you felt like adults didn't handle it well?
I wouldn't say that she was bullied, but a few people made comments to her in school that were not okay. But the majority of people were supportive. However, even though she wasn't bullied, a lot of her friends changed. So a lot of her, good friends just before she came out, she's no longer close with, and she has an entirely new set of friends. So while they may not have bullied her, the relationships changed, and that wasn't necessarily Ava's choice. But right now she has an incredibly supportive community of friends. And, I would say the school really did try to support her. There were a couple of incidences where the school could have supported her better, but she was the first to come out in her high school and transition while in high school. And so they really did help to support her and make some accommodations for her. I think there were more parents who had issues than kids who had issues. But overall, I would say we're fortunate that we live in Los Angeles and that she was very well supported. And I just want to go back to your comment about the show Pose. There is still a big disparity between, white trans kids and adults and trans people of color. And so I really, really think it's so important that, trans people of color have examples of other trans people of color, out who are, thriving and doing well, and that it's accepted in that community more as well.
Are you finding that your book resonates across the board?
I think I'm finding that my book resonates with parents, all parents. I mean, because it's really about parenting, and having something unexpected happen with your child and feeling like the rug was pulled out from under your feet, and how do you handle that? And that happens to every parent at some point or another, to one degree or another. So I've really had I've had great feedback from, whether it's parents of trans kids or just, parents of who don't have a trans child like you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've spoken about having a gay son, and I'm often surprised about who comes up afterwards, because that feeling of isolation and worry about your kid, if you have a kid with some kind of diagnosis, I mean, so many people would come up to talk to me who had nothing to do with having a gay child. They just understood the emotion of being a parent whose path didn't follow the path they thought it would, and how we deal with that as parents. Right. Okay, so can you tell us, like, Ava's remarkable. I mean, you raised a really beautiful daughter. Even before you were on board, she was out there advocating for herself. So, first of all, kudos to you, but also just tell us about the strength of this girl.
Yeah, I mean, she is incredibly strong, because before I before I got on board, she, in her freshman year of high school, when she still very much looked and presented like a boy and was not out, she walked into a school counselor office and said, "This is what's going on with me, and I don't feel comfortable changing for PE with the boys, and I need a private area to change." And they got her a private area to change. She asked if she could meet with a counselor weekly and talk to the counselor about what was going on, and they arranged for her to do that. And these were really all things that I should have been doing for her. I should have been advocating, for the school to give her an area to change where she was comfortable. But because I wasn't on board, she was having to do this for herself. And throughout her freshman year, she wasn't out as a girl, but she kept pushing the boundaries and with the way she presented and, starting to wear dresses and, bras and without, being out. And, it's incredibly brave to walk through high school when people still think that you're a boy and wearing a dress and starting to grow out your hair and play with makeup. It takes incredible strength and bravery to do that. And I am in awe of her at that time, I was so much going through my own thing that I couldn't see how brave and strong and, resilient she was. But now I see it.
So, it's interesting to me that you have this guilt over not being the one to do these things, mm-hmm. because, even if you had been her champion at that moment, it might have been the best thing still to let her advocate for herself if she could, because this is a skill that she has for the rest of her life now.
Yes. Yes, she definitely will need to use the skill of self-advocating throughout the rest of her life, I'm sure. And so I think, maybe it is a good thing that I wasn't, not on board, but I still have a lot of guilt and regret about it. So
that's what we do as mothers.
Right.
The guilt and the regret.
I also kind of wonder if I had supported her right from the beginning, would we even be doing, all of this? Because I feel like part of my wanting to write and advocate is sort of making up for my mistakes. So I'm not sure if I would have been as vocal if I hadn't made those mistakes.
So it's a little bit of a meant to be instead of a guilt, a want of guilt. Okay, so what's the first thing you did to really go out there boldly and show Ava that you were her biggest cheerleader?
Yeah, I think the very first time that I felt proud of myself for actually doing some advocacy for her was when it was time for a choir concert, and she didn't, and this was freshman year, and she didn't want to wear what the boys had to wear, which was a white shirt and black pants. And so the boys would wear a white shirt and black pants, and the girls would wear the black choir dress. And so I emailed the choir teacher asking if they could make accommodations for her. And so could she wear, for example, a white shirt with a black skirt? And I wrote this email to the choir teacher and the school counselor. And it was the first time that I felt like I was advocating for her and taking charge, and it really felt incredible to do that. And I felt really proud of myself in that moment. And then that really just started things off, from that point on.
And what was the outcome, though?
The outcome was that the school said that they would accommodate her. They said that, they gave a list of, options of what she could wear, including if she wanted to just wear the black choir dress, that she could do that. And what happened was the following year, they actually changed the choir syllabus. So rather than saying, boys, white shirt, black pants, girls, black dress, the following year, the choir syllabus said, concert attire, option 1, black pants, white shirt, option 2, black dress, so that whether you're boy, girl, diverse, non-binary, you could just, pick which one of those you want. And I'm sure there are plenty of cisgender girls who would rather be in the white shirt and black pants than the black choir dress. And, so I think that was a great change that we were able to do in school. And so not only did they do that the following year, they also changed the name of the choirs from men's choir and women's choir to, I think, treble choir and bass choir, so that you're not sort of defining it by gender, but just by, okay, if your voice is, like this, you're in this choir, and if your voice is like this, you're in this choir. So, yeah.
Again, remarkable. Just it really is like big change, but it seems kind of like you're not bulldozing the system. You're just quietly getting people on board to change and see the world differently.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that is so touching about your speeches and your book is that you're so honest about what went on. Mm-hmm. And even like, there's something about your vulnerability that makes us love you more. Even though I want to say, don't be so hard on yourself. Yeah. That is the moment where we can see your humanity and your flaws.
Yeah.
When someone comes to talk to you, how do you guide them? For most of us right now, trans is still relatively new, and even having the right language and knowing how to do it well. And when it's your own kid, it's a very big adjustment, I would imagine, and you've talked about. So how do you help a parent who's where you were? If they come to you personally, what do you say to them?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things. One, just to go back to sort of the degree of truth telling and vulnerability, in the book, I really wanted to show that you can go from this place of complete devastation to thriving and advocacy. And so the only way to really show that was to put it, all out there. But I think, if a parent comes to me, I think we fear what we don't know, and we fear for the future of our children. So you really have to address that fear. And for a lot of us, we have not had positive examples of trans people in our lives, and we don't really know trans people. And so if you start seeing positive examples of trans people and reading about trans people who are doing incredible things, and going to a support group where you talk to other parents who are advocating for their children and whose children and young adults are doing well and going to college and thriving, then that fear factor of what's my child's future going to be like is lessened. And that really helps, overcome a hurdle that you need to overcome. So I think trying to address their fear first and foremost, which is what is dominating their reaction, is the best way to do it. And I think getting somebody into a support group or talking to parents of other trans kids is the best way to do that. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a resistance to, on the parents' part to do that. They're not ready to do it, but the sooner you can do that, the better. So that would be really, I think, my first step, is to ask them what they're afraid of and address that.
Okay, first I want to say a massive thank you to Ava for being brave and outspoken and changing the world, and to Dr. Paria Hassouri. Having time with you today and reading your book have changed me, and I really encourage other people to get the book, Found in Transition. And thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and sharing this conversation in this very important week in particular. Thank you.